Am I the a-hole for telling my dad and his fiancée how I really feel, sending my dad into a deep depression? I know the title sounds super bad, but hear me out. Throwaway because some cousins know my main. I, 18M, am an only child. I live with my mom full-time, my parents are divorced. To understand why things exploded the way they did, you have to understand the dynamic of my childhood. Looking back, it feels like I grew up in two different houses that occupied the same square footage. Some quick context: during my entire life, my mom always picked up after me and my dad. They both worked full-time, but my mom handled breakfast, lunch, dinner, groceries, cleaning, and laundry. She was the invisible engine that kept our lives running. I remember the sound of the vacuum cleaner being the background noise to my Saturday morning cartoons while my dad slept in. I remember her coming home from an 8-hour shift and immediately heading to the kitchen to start chopping vegetables while my dad headed to the recliner. What did my dad do? Mow the lawn, shovel snow, fix things like the sink if it ever broke. He did the manly chores, the ones that happen once a week or once a month, the ones people actually see you doing. When I was younger, I always loved my dad because he would do fun things with me, take me to sports games, play with me in the yard sometimes, buy me McDonald's or ice cream. He was the yes man. If I wanted a toy, he'd buy it. If I wanted to go to the park, he was down. He was the fun parent, and my mom was the caring one. She always made me food, helped me in school, packed my bags, comforted me when I was sad, and took care of me when I was sick. My mom was the one who knew my shoe size, the names of my teachers, and exactly how I liked my toast. But as a kid, caring feels like rules. Fun feels like love. I didn't see the exhaustion in her eyes, I only saw the happy-go-lucky attitude of my dad. When I got older, I started to realize more and more how much my mom did, while my dad would sit on the couch and watch TV or stuff like that. The contrast started to become jarring. I'd see my mom struggling with 4 bags of groceries, and my dad wouldn't even look up from the game to hold the door. My mom asked me when I was quite young to help her out with cleaning, etc., and I remember I would get mad when she asked. I didn't want to clean, who does? I was mimicking the only male role model I had. I thought cleaning was her job. But one day, after she had gotten annoyed that I didn't even pick up after myself, I yelled at her to leave me alone. I was probably like 12, and that day I heard her cry in the bathroom afterward. That sound, that muffled, shaky sobbing through a locked door, is burned into my brain. It was the first time I realized my mom wasn't a superhero, she was a person who was being pushed to her breaking point by the two people she loved most. When I realized I made her cry, it clicked in my head that she was doing everything for us and my dad did barely anything. And I did absolutely nothing at all. It was a sickening realization. I felt like a parasite. It felt like I grew up super quickly over the course of a week, and I started helping my mom a lot more. I started doing my own laundry. I'd wash the dishes before she even sat down to eat. It became a bonding thing for us, talking and helping each other out with cleaning and groceries, etc. We became a team of 2. My dad was still like the fun parent, would take me to games and all that, but I grew more and more annoyed that he didn't help out at all. I'd be in the kitchen with my mom, scrubbing pans, and I'd look into the living room and see him with his feet up, completely oblivious. I think when I was like 14, I once said to his face that he never helps out around the house, and he got furious with me. He didn't have an argument, he just had volume. He yelled in my face and sent me to my room. My mom comforted me and told me to just let him be, you and I got this alone anyway. That was her philosophy, keep the peace at any cost. The few times he was dragged into helping, he would always make a mess somehow, and it would end in an argument with him and my mom. He'd wash the dishes but leave them covered in grease. He'd fold the laundry but just cram it into drawers. I've realized now he most likely did a bad job on purpose so we wouldn't ask him for help. It's called weaponized incompetence, and he was a master at it. When I was 15, my mom found out that my dad cheated. He had been for like a year. The betrayal wasn't just sexual, it was the fact that while my mom was essentially serving him hand and foot, he was out looking for something new. They had the biggest fight ever, and my dad left us that night to live with his mistress and her daughter from a previous marriage. He didn't even try to fix it. He just traded in his old life for a fresh one where no one knew he was lazy yet. He came a few days later and picked most of his stuff up. I don't remember much about how the divorce went, other than my mom being a wreck. She lost weight. She stopped sleeping. When it was finalized, she honestly broke down even more. The reality of being alone hit her. I fed her, helped her into the shower, held her at night. I was 15, acting as the emotional support for a woman whose world had ended. I've never seen her that bad, and if I didn't hate my dad for what he had done in general, I started absolutely despising him for what he did to my mom. Family from my mom's side would help us too, but it was mostly me since no one could really move in and stay with us full time. I became the man of the house because the actual man of the house was too busy playing house with someone else. I picked up a job at 16 to help at home. I worked late shifts after school just to make sure we didn't have to worry about the mortgage. It took my mom maybe half a year to start going back to her old self. Slowly, the light came back. She grew into someone better, happier, and I had never seen her so full of life when she was with my dad. She realized she wasn't losing a partner, she was losing a 200-pound weight around her neck. A month or two after the divorce was over, my dad started pushing for me to live with him 50% of the time. The audacity was staggering. I told him to F***ck off basically, but my mom said I shouldn't shut him out completely. She didn't want me to have a broken relationship, even if he broke it. So I went to him every other weekend. It was torture. He tried to be all nice to me, and so did his mistress, but I hated their guts. The house smelled like different candles, different food, a different life. The mistress, let's call her Hannah, tried to be nice to me but also boss me around, and I basically ignored her. She'd ask me to set the table, and I'd just walk into the guest room and lock the door. She has a daughter from a previous marriage who tried to bond with me, but I ignored her. I didn't want a sister. I didn't want a new family. Barely even a year after the divorce was over, Hannah got pregnant, and they had another daughter. It felt like a final slap in the face to my mom. My dad and Hannah have tried to push for me to be a big brother for them, but I couldn't care about them less. To me, they are just the physical evidence of his betrayal. Now I'm 18, and I gradually stopped going to my dad's. I barely ever stay a night, I just visit, and my dad keeps trying to blame my mom for it. He thinks she's poisoning me because he can't fathom that I have eyes and a brain of my own. Hannah gives me more and more attitude and tries to use her daughters to guilt me into staying over, saying, they miss their big brother, you're so selfish. We had a big confrontation when I visited last. I stayed for 20 minutes before Hannah started trying to lecture me, so I just started leaving. I was done with the fake pleasantries and the forced bonding. My dad blocked my way and told me I have to grow up and leave the past in the past. He had this patronizing look on his face, like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. He said I can't be mad forever and I'm acting as if I don't love him, and we're all family. That just set me off. All those years of watching my mom cry, all those shifts I worked to keep us afloat, all the nights I spent holding her together while he was out with Hannah, it all came rushing out. I started screaming at him that I haven't loved him in years. The look of shock on his face was almost satisfying. I told him that he was always a lazy POS who acted more like a child than a husband to my mom. She always cleaned up after him, cleaned the house alone, washed his clothes, made him food, fetched him another beer even though the kitchen was 5 steps away. I laid it all out, the weaponized incompetence, the selfishness, the lack of respect. But all that ever came out of his mouth were complaints and demands. I told him that buying me McDonald's didn't make him a parent. I told him he took me out to do fun things, sure, but that's not all there is to being a dad. He was never there for me, never helped me in school, never drove me anywhere or picked me up, never comforted me. He was a guest in our home who happened to share our DNA. And then he did the worst possible thing. After years of standing on my mother's back and using her, he went and F***ed a random woman and absolutely broke her. I pointed at him, my hand shaking with rage. I screamed about how a kid had to pick up the pieces of his own mother because his father was such a POS and useless garbage. I felt nothing for him, in fact, I still hate his guts, and I hate his mistress too. I turned to Hannah, who was standing there with her mouth open, and told her that she means nothing to me. She has no authority over me. I don't give a sh*t about her or her kids. I saw her flinch, but I didn't care. I told them both I wish nothing bad on their daughters, but Hannah is a horrible person for filling her kids' heads with lies about how I'm their brother when I've repeatedly told them I'm not. Then I looked my dad in the eyes and said, my father died to me years ago, and that man wasn't even a good dad. You're just a stranger to me. I pushed my way past him and left. I didn't look back. I drove home with the music blasting, my heart hammering in my chest, feeling lighter than I had in years. When I got home, I told my mom everything and cried. The adrenaline crashed, and I just sobbed on her shoulder. She hugged me and told me she understands my emotions but wishes I wasn't so aggressive, for my own sake. My mom has never said a bad thing about my dad despite everything, and when I would curse him out, she always told me it wasn't worth it. My dad and his new family were silent for a few days, but then Hannah started bombarding me with texts about how I was a horrible son and how my dad hasn't stopped crying since. She said he's in a deep depression, that he can't get out of bed, that I destroyed him. I know he always wanted a son and wanted a close bond, but he's failed me as a father, and I don't care. He wanted the reward without doing the work. But family from Hannah's side, who I've met like once or not at all, have also started messaging me, saying I was out of line and everyone makes mistakes. They're calling me a monster for breaking a man who just wanted to love me. But I don't think it's a mistake. I genuinely think my dad's a POS, and I don't know him anything. I don't think telling the truth is a mistake. But I guess all the hate from so many people has me doubting myself. Maybe I should have just left without a word. So yeah, am I the a-hole? Update. For those who commented or just read the original post, things escalated quicker than I expected after I posted. I thought maybe a handful of people would respond, but it ended up being way more than that. Most of the responses were saying the same thing, that I wasn't wrong for how I felt, even if the way I said it was harsh. Seeing that from so many people made it harder to brush off what happened or pretend it wasn't a big deal. It also made me realize that just leaving things as they were wasn't really an option anymore. After reading through a lot of those responses, I decided to actually do something instead of sitting around feeling stuck. I wrote a long message to my dad. Not something rushed, not something written out of pure anger, but something that actually covered everything I've been holding in for years. I didn't want it to turn into a rant that could be dismissed or twisted. I wanted it to be clear, direct, and leave no room for misunderstanding. I started by acknowledging that what I said during the argument was harsh. There's no point pretending it wasn't. But I also made it clear that I'm not apologizing for it. That wasn't said to provoke him, it was just being honest. What I said didn't come out of nowhere, it came from years of watching how things were in our house and how he acted. I went into what it was like growing up with both of them working full-time but only one of them actually carrying the responsibility of the house. My mom handled everything. Meals, cleaning, laundry, groceries, making sure everything ran smoothly. My dad handled the bare minimum and acted like that was enough. At the time, I didn't fully understand it. I just saw it as normal because that's what I grew up with. That changed when I got older. It wasn't one specific moment, more like a gradual realization that things weren't balanced at all. The day it really hit me was when I made my mom cry after snapping at her for asking me to help. That stuck with me. After that, I started helping more, not because I was told to, but because it felt wrong not to. And every time I did something simple like picking up after myself or helping with chores, it made it more obvious how little he was doing. I explained that in the message. Not in an emotional way, just laying it out. A kid stepping up while a grown adult avoids basic responsibility isn't normal, no matter how you try to frame it. Over time that built resentment, even if I didn't fully recognize it at first. I also addressed the fact that he did do things with me. I didn't ignore that part because it wouldn't be accurate. He took me to games, did fun activities, things that most kids would be excited about. But I made it clear that those things don't replace being present in other ways. Being a parent isn't just about entertainment. It's about showing up when things aren't easy or fun. There were times I needed help with school, or just needed someone to talk to, and I didn't get that from him. It was always redirected to my mom, usually with some excuse about being tired or having a long day. That might not seem like a big deal in the moment, but over time it creates distance. You stop going to that person because you already know what the response will be. I told him that as well. Not to hurt him, but because it's the truth. You can't build a strong relationship if most of the meaningful moments are handled by someone else. Then I moved on to what happened between him and my mom. I didn't soften that either. I said exactly what I think about how it happened and how it affected everything afterward. Cheating isn't something that just gets brushed aside because time passed. It changes how you see someone, especially when you've seen the impact it had on the other person. I brought up what it was like after he left. How my mom was, how bad things got, and how I had to step in and take care of her. That's not something a kid should have to do, but it happened. And that's part of why I feel the way I do now. It's not just about the act itself, it's about everything that came with it. I also addressed his current situation. I said clearly that I don't accept Hannah as anything other than the person he cheated with. I've been polite because that's how I was raised, but that doesn't mean I see her as family or someone with authority over me. That's a boundary I'm not willing to move. I made sure to separate that from the kids. I said I don't wish anything bad on them. They didn't do anything wrong. But I also made it clear that I'm not going to take on a role that doesn't feel real to me just because they want it to be that way. Forcing that only creates more problems, not less. I told him to deal with the situation with Hannah's family. The messages needed to stop immediately. I'm not going to accept being harassed by people who have no idea what actually happened or what things were like before. That part was non-negotiable. I also laid out what would happen if things didn't change. Not as a threat, just as a boundary. If the pressure and guilt-tripping continued, I would cut contact completely. There wouldn't be any back and forth about it. I told him I'm not visiting for a while. That part is already happening anyway, but I made it official. If I ever decide to visit again, it will be because I want to, not because I'm being pushed into it. That's the only way it could even start to feel normal again. Before sending it, I read through everything a few times. I wanted to make sure it said what I meant without turning into something pointless or overly aggressive. Once I was sure, I sent it and left it alone. It took a few hours for him to respond. When he did, it was short. Just "I understand." No defense, no arguing, no trying to change my mind. Just that. Since then, everything has been quiet. The messages from Hannah's side stopped completely. No more random texts, no more comments. That part alone made a big difference. Right now things feel different. Not better, not worse, just different. The constant tension from outside voices is gone, but everything else is still there. Saying everything out loud doesn't fix it, it just means it's not being ignored anymore. I don't feel like I need to keep explaining myself or defending how I feel. That's probably the biggest change. There's a sense of space that wasn't there before. At the same time, it's not like this solved everything. There's still a lot that hasn't been addressed and probably won't be anytime soon. That's just how it is. I'm not cutting him off completely, but I'm also not pretending things are okay. That middle ground is where it's staying for now. If anything changes, it'll have to come from him, not from me forcing it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Thanks for listening. Edit, some people questioned if I'm really 18 LOL, and I get why. It probably reads more structured than what people expect from someone my age. But I didn't just sit down and type everything out in one go and hit send. I spent a good amount of time on it, thinking about what I actually wanted to say instead of just dumping anger into a message. My mom looked over it too, not to change anything, just to make sure it made sense and wasn't going to come across in a way I didn't intend. I've always liked reading and writing, so putting things into words has never been that hard for me. Anyway, thanks to everyone who reached out. This is the last update from me. Have a nice life.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update.